Hello, my name is Jeff Hammond, Senior Associate Editor with Multi-Housing News, and thanks for joining us for Multifamily's Top Marketers. Today, we'll be taking some time to discuss affordable housing with our guest, Mo Vela. Mo possesses a deep understanding of multifamily real estate. In addition to his history of multifamily asset ownership and development, he has worked within the industry and in the realms of law and public policy. He is the founding partner and CEO of global business development consulting firm, The Vela Group. Previously, he served as Director of Administration and Senior Advisor in the Office of Vice President Joe Biden, which was his second White House appointment, following an earlier role as CFO and Senior Advisor on Hispanic Affairs for Vice President Al Gore. Welcome, Mo. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me. It's always good to be with you guys.
Now, I just want to dive right in. And one issue I've heard you mention frequently is that we need much more affordable housing than we have right now and more than what's coming through the pipeline. This goes back well before the pandemic, and data shows that the problem has only become worse since. How do you think the new administration's approach to affordable housing will play out?
My prediction is that you're going to have an administration that, first of all, understands how vital affordable housing is, number one. They acknowledge and they respect the population and the segment of our citizenry, if you will, who need affordable housing. And so therefore, I think in this administration versus maybe the previous one or even others, honestly, I think you're going to have a very strong effort and push to not only create affordable housing, but to recognize it for what it is, which is equality and the opportunity to create equality economically, Jeff. And I think that's a very, very important distinguishing factor for, I think, what will come out of this administration, which is, I think they understand the fundamentals. It's not just that people can't afford market rate, right? It's not that just that somebody needs affordable housing. It's the underlying objective, right? Is that if we can help people through affordable housing to rise up a little economically, it impacts every aspect of an American's life. That's what I hope we're going to see from this administration. I want to just state a couple of facts that I think, whether we're talking about how the administration is going to handle affordable housing, how your listeners, as owners, as developers, as property managers, are going to handle it as marketing companies to affordable housing tenancy. Let's start with some facts here. According to the Urban Institute, home ownership is 25% less for Black Americans and Latino Americans. Okay. So I just want to put all of this in context. And according to our Harvard University study, 55%, let me repeat that because this is important for almost everything we're going to talk about. 55% of Black and Latino renters in the United States are cost burdened. 55%. And 1/3 to 1/2 of Black and Latino renters, 1/3 to 1/2 of their income goes to rent. Why do I lay down this premise? Because it's the reason that we need to discuss affordable housing, and it's the fundamental reason we have to have a supply of affordable housing. And the last thing I'll say before we move on to the next question is, why is all of that important? In the context of affordable housing is clearly very, very vital to have this discussion. But I also want to lay down this predicate, that those statistics I just shared and the need for a larger supply and inventory of affordable housing are necessary because what we all understand about housing, whatever type it is, wherever it is, it has a lot to do with your dignity, your pride, and your ability to have access to education, healthcare, financial security, and the economy. And therefore, if it impacts every aspect of a human's journey, it impacts every aspect of our nation and our economy and us as an American family.
One thing that you have talked about in the past is that there often is pushback against affordable housing from places in the community, whether we can call this NIMBYism. It is something that's a very tangible pushback factor. How does an affordable housing developer market a project to overcome these hurdles?
Well, I think that there are several things that a developer can do. Certainly, when I was involved in the industry and we were providing affordable housing inventory ourselves, I learned some very valuable lessons on this very topic. First of all, I think it's really vital, and this goes to actually, I think I'd like to tie two things here together. One, the obstacles, and also it ties into and segues into, if you're a developer, how do you market your affordable housing properties? As well, because they're kind of tied together. I think in either case, marketing them or obstacles, I think it's imperative that the developer and their team contribute to the destruction of the stigma of affordable housing. I liken it to, Jeff, the stigma about mental health, for example. There's no reason to treat mental health any different than your physical health. Well, in my eyes and in my experience, having been involved in this for years, we need to destroy the stigma and this kind of casting affordable housing versus market rate housing. The fact of the matter is that they are both housing. And the fact of the matter is, and this is what a developer needs to overcome, don't contribute to that divisive NIMBYism. Destroy that stigma. And I'm going to talk about how I suggest we do that, right? I think one of the ways is that it's very effective, at least I found it to be, to overcome that obstacle. It's about highlighting on the developer side, highlighting the contributions that your tenancy, that your renters are going to be making to the local community. So in other words, how do you do that? Well, make sure that you have leaders on your property who get involved in the community so that other members of the community who might have otherwise had that NIMBY attitude see that there is this mesh, this assimilation, if you will, destroying this them versus us mentality. That is the major objective, in my opinion, of a developer of affordable housing. To get rid of the NIMBYism, you're going to have to show, first of all, we're equal. Why are we equal? We're equal because whether you're at a market rate apartment 3 blocks away or an affordable housing apartment complex in the other direction, you are equal because you're both humans who deserve respect and dignity and the ability to be proud of where you live. You both are contributing members of society. You're both contributing members to the economy. So what I'm saying is you got the developer and his team or her team have to get out there and assimilate, bridge this divide in the community, and demonstrate this sense of equality in everything they do and everything they say. I also think you need to focus on all the positive. And if somebody brings up the negative, immediately rebuke it, because we've got to stop the stigma. We've got to stop this messaging on the other side. And the only way we're going to do that is if we understand, those of us that have participated in the affordable housing ecosystem or supply chain, we have to stand up and say, time out, we are equal to you. Our rents might be different. We may be a part of a public-private partnership or whatever, but that's part of the financial structure. That has nothing to do with our tenancy.
Right. Okay. Can you give me an example from your time as an affordable housing developer when you've put something like this into practice and how it played out?
Oh, absolutely. My work when I was, doing affordable housing was mostly in Latino-centric neighborhoods. So I'm going to give, I don't want to jump ahead to cultural customization because I know you want to go there in a minute, right? But the most integral way or example I can give you was my cultural customization model and the implementation of it. And so we'll go through that in a minute, but I'll give you just a one quick example. And it's because it's a beautiful example. So one of the things I did was we converted the tennis courts on our property because we had 97% tenancy that were Latino. Okay. I go back to how do you market affordable housing? I don't care whether it's affordable housing, class A, B, C. I don't care if it's market rate. I don't care if it's luxury. I don't care what it is. Know your audience. So therefore, your audience needs to feel like you see them, you hear them, you respect them, you celebrate them, and you're listening to them. So I knew our audience. Our audience was 97% Latino. The actual zip code was like 68 or 70% Latino. I practiced what I preached, right? Which is, how do you become a part of the community? So a small example I did was I converted my tennis courts to a soccer field. And what did I do? I invited them to host the local soccer tournaments on my property. And what did that do? It made us part of the community as a whole. It welcomed other members of the community who didn't live on our property onto our property so that they could see, and this is important, they could see there was nothing to fear about affordable housing or anybody who lives there. There was nothing to be ashamed of on our property. And so that is a small example of the types of things you can do that just are common sense, in my opinion, right? But most people don't do it. But that's what I'm talking about. I also put my property manager, I had her sit on, I don't know how many community, county working groups, advisory councils, so that our property was at the table with somebody across the county who had a Class A property. And we were equal at that moment, see, because we were both on the working group or the advisory council or the forum or the roundtable discussion.
Yeah, it seems just like increasing involvement is sort of a silver bullet here.
It absolutely is. And again, it's also understanding, as I said earlier, why are you getting involved? And it's to break down this division, right, of market rate versus affordable, them versus us. Right? Wealthier tenants versus working class tenants. As an owner and developer of affordable housing, we want to get rid of all that stigma and all those factors that people use to divide. So any way you can create the equality, this spirit of inclusion, this spirit that, you know what, we're all in this together. Doesn't matter how much you pay for rent. I promise you the person paying affordable housing rents are working just as hard, if not harder, than the person that's paying market rate.
I do want to pivot. You mentioned the cultural customization that we'd get to it later. And I think actually what better time than just jumping into it right now. Can you tell me just a bit about the concept of cultural customization and how you've applied it in the past?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity. It was way back when in the early 2000s, probably 2003. I was a senior vice president at a REIT, and I give them a lot of credit for bringing me in as an executive on the executive team at this multifamily housing REIT, because what they had discovered, Jeff, was that of the 78 or 80,000 units that they owned, that a large percentage of the tenancy was starting to become Hispanic. And what they realized was that there was this tremendous divide in this way they were, those properties with high Latino tenancy. You were seeing a disproportionate amount of vacancy issues, turnover issues, leaving your lease early type of issues. So everything that was supposed to be going up in multifamily housing, right, as an owner developer, was going down, and everything that was supposed to be going down was going up. So they brought me in with the idea that I was going to develop this concept that I had, which was I coined it cultural customization, because it's not just for Latinos. It works for any group that are like-minded or like-cultured or have commonalities. That's how I got started. And I developed this cultural customization model, which basically, Jeff, in a nutshell, the premise was what I said earlier: know your audience. If you're buying or owning or developing or managing a property, a multifamily property, and the zip code is 82% Latino, then you need to understand the Latino tenant, right? So they were handling, most multifamily owners and developers and managers would operate that piece of property just like the one they operate in a beautiful area of Dallas, Texas, that's much less ethnically diverse. And I just simply said, no wonder you have problems. You don't know your tenancy. You don't know the community. You don't understand them. And what is that interpreted as? It's you feel a lack of respect. That's how those people in that community feel. Well, they're not marketing to us. They don't understand us. So my cultural customization model is about understanding your future tenancy, celebrating them, respecting them, honoring them. And the way I did that, Jeff, was through every single thing you experienced on my property. So from the minute you drive onto my property, I made sure that it was welcoming, not just to African Americans or Anglos or Asian Americans, but I made sure that there were plenty of things that were also welcoming to the 78% of the surrounding community, these Latinos that lived in that zip code. So from paint color selection, I did focus groups and all this research and discovered what paint colors were more welcoming to ethnic minorities, for example, than a non-ethnic tenancy. And so we repainted the whole complex with colors that I knew were more welcoming, that made them feel comfortable. And all the way from that, Jeff, to bilingual staff, everyone on my staff had to be bilingual, because the days of handing a Latino that predominantly spoke Spanish in that zip code, we would hand them a 17-page lease to sign in English. And then we wondered why they left after 10 months, or we wondered why they violated the lease. They had no idea what they signed. So it's all the way through bilingual staff. I provided all of the lease in a condensed Spanish version of 1 or 2 pages with the highlights, and explained to them in Spanish, here's what you're signing. Here is what you're committing to do. Here are what your responsibilities are. Why? Because I understood our cultural traditions, which is Latinos tend to be very responsible and very community oriented. And they tend to be very respectful if they know what the rules are and if they understand what is expected of them. But nobody was explaining it to them in a language they could understand. So all the way over to the community garden is one of my favorite examples. I made sure that in the community garden, I planted every season plants that were conducive to Latino cuisine. So a lot of tomatoes, anything that would go into arroz y frijoles, rice and beans, right, which are 2 staples of Latino cultural cuisine. And so little chili peppers that I knew were traditional in most Latino cultural cuisines, tomatoes, cilantro. So again, even down to the community garden was celebratory, respectful, inclusive, and honored the culture. Okay. So my park-like area, I knew that Latinos on Saturdays and Sundays, we call them in Spanglish pachangas, but we like to get together on the weekends as large family gatherings. I wanted them to get out of the roadways and my parking lots, and I gave them a place to go do these family gatherings with beautiful barbecue areas and outdoor barbecue pits and covered cabanas, because I knew that was part of the social fabric of my tenancy. And then I already mentioned converting the tennis courts to soccer fields, which kept my tenancy almost 100%, because I was bringing on a constant stream of potential tenants. And so again, it's just the premise is know your audience, know who lives around your property, and welcome them on their terms.
Through using this framework, have you found any perhaps less obvious advantages or maybe surprising advantages from it?
Several, honestly. I remember when I turned my community center, you know how you have the clubhouse or whatever, I turned it into a community center. And instead of the traditional just birthday parties or whatever they would have there. Of course, I allowed all that. And the quinceañeras, which is the 15th birthday celebration of a young Latina young lady. So, I made it conducive and beautiful enough to where they could do those types of things. But I also created empowering opportunities. For example, we would hold after school tutoring there. We would teach the moms and wives and women on our property, for example, how to change a tire, how to change the oil, how to build your resume. We did resume writing courses. And all of these were free. So to me, one of the most beautiful surprise advantages was this sense of empowerment and the look in the eyes of my tenants when they were empowered with information or knowledge or something that was going to improve or enhance their life. So the most beautiful surprise advantage was this sense of empowerment that we provided to our tenants. And it resulted, frankly, in another. It wasn't as much of a surprise, Jeff, this next one, but it is certainly one of the advantages that when it comes to, I think, most ethnic communities, what happens when you implement a program like my cultural customization program, for example, what I found was the loyalty went through the roof. They did everything they could in gratitude for everything we did for them, right? Through all of these after school programs, the soccer, the barbecue areas, the community gardens, we changed the colors, things like that. They were so grateful that the loyalty in return was helping me community police. Boy, if they saw somebody trashing or doing something at midnight in the parking lot, I didn't have to do much anymore after that. They were doing their own community policing because the sense of pride in their complex went stratospherically through the roof. And their loyalty to us as the managers and owners was so heartfelt. And it was one of the most beautiful surprises. I knew there would be a loyalty because I'm Latino and I understood that cultural tradition of ours, but I didn't expect that it would be at the level that we got to experience. It was absolutely a sight to behold.
That's great. So with the classes you mentioned, did the operational staff at the properties themselves handle those classes, or was that through a partnership with other organizations?
That's a great question. It was actually through a partnership with other nonprofits in the area. Every community has a ton of nonprofit organizations, each of which has a very clear mission. They are yearning for people like us. I reached out to several of them and, oh my goodness, I can't tell you how many after school volunteer tutors I had. Just professionals in the county, in the local city that would say, I want to give back, right? A CPA, I remember a gentleman, not Hispanic, didn't speak Spanish. I wanted that too. Thought that was important. I thought it was important to bring different cultures together so that people stop being afraid of each other. So it was through a partnership with local leaders, local organizations. And I was never at a loss, Jeff. Not one time, no matter what it was, we even did a class on how to interview for jobs. I did a whole series, a multi-week series on women's empowerment. So yes, partnerships with local orgs, partnerships with local leaders, elected officials, but I would often bring the justice of the peace or the sheriff. I brought the sheriff's department many times to hold a community forum, right? So that they would understand they're not somebody we need to fear. They're actually our friend. They're there to protect us, to keep us safe. I wanted to break down the barriers, build these bridges. And that is amazing when you think of the fact that a multifamily property manager, owner, developer can have the power to do those things, Jeff. That is kind of the big picture message of my cultural customization model is use your gift that you have, the ability to be a manager, owner, property developer in the multifamily industry. Use it for the betterment of humanity. You have that power.
That's fantastic. And it does tie back to what we had discussed at the beginning about getting the community to the local community and neighborhood to buy into having more affordable housing.
Absolutely.
When you make these sort of connections at the local level, there's really no downside to that, I don't think.
That's exactly right. I just want to be clear on something because I once in a while I'll do one of these talks on this model, and I'll get criticized because somebody said, well, you're just worried about Latinos. That's not true. I have actually applied this cultural customization model on a very Orthodox Jewish community in Florida. So I've done it on an African-American centric property. So this is not just about Latinos. I want to make that very clear. This concept, you have to mix and match. Again, know your audience. If my Jewish tendency is going to keep kosher, I need to be aware that that's who is the majority, that are the majority of the people that live in the area where my property is. I need to, again, celebrate, respect, honor their traditions and their culture and their religious beliefs to the best I can. And again, what does it do? Makes them feel welcome, makes them feel celebrated, makes them feel respected. They're going to go tell everybody at their synagogue, at temple, to please come live at their property because they are welcome there and they're respected there. So it works with all the groups, not just Latinos. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that.
No, thank you for adding that. But would you say there are any potential drawbacks to using an approach like this?
It works from a business perspective. It worked for me as a property owner and developer and manager. It worked for my tenancy. It worked for the entire community. It worked for the economy, and it worked for humanity. That's my answer to anybody who said, why are you doing that? Because it works, because it's the right thing to do, because it made great business sense.
Since you've been talking about this cultural customization process for quite a while, how have you seen it come to fruition in the industry? Are you seeing more developers and property owners and operators implementing these approaches?
Since I started it in the early 2000s, I have seen more, but far, far less than need to be doing it, Jeff. For, some of them kicking and screaming, I think, but many of them, I think, starting to face the reality that our nation, as an example here in the United States, we don't look like we did even a year ago. And a year from now, we're not going to look the same. Why? Because we continue to culturally diversify as a nation. The Latino population is growing. African-American population is growing. The Asian American population has grown. There are now states like Texas that are California, majority minority. And so I don't think the multifamily industry has any choice to ignore this reality any longer. More are doing it. More people are paying attention. But there are still, I would say the majority are not at their own peril, in my opinion.
Now, we are running towards the end of our segment here, so I would like to ask you one last question before we sign off. And that would be, given the high percentage of minorities who are renting and contrarily, the low percentage of minorities who are owning multifamily properties, what advice would you give to somebody who owns a multifamily property looking to implement such an approach without that context?
Surround yourself with people who would possess the knowledge, the experience, and the ability to create this program. Certainly, I'm hesitant to offer myself up to all of your listeners, but because I hope that I hear from some of them, Jeff, to be honest, because I believe in this so much, and I think it's so important, not just for each of us as business owners, but actually it's important for everyone involved in the ecosystem. So I would be happy to give anybody any advice I could and help anybody. But I think in a nutshell, I would say surround yourself with people who can help you implement the program.
It looks like we're about out of time, but Mo, I just wanted to thank you one more time for giving your time to us today. You've offered a lot of really great insights on cultural customization as it relates to affordable housing, and I suspect to the wider multifamily industry. And we would love to have you back sometime in the future to dive into some more of these topics. But for now, I guess this will be it. So thank you very much for the time.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
Until next time, everyone, make sure to follow MHN's Multifamily's Top Marketers on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.